Hello and welcome to Time to Think, Parenting Adolescents, a seminar designed for parents and caregivers to help reflect on the different nature of the relationship that evolves as you begin to parent an adolescent rather than a young person. So today, myself and Steph, we both work for Newport Mind in the Children and Young People's team, and we work with young people doing one-to-ones in our week, and we also work with parents and caregivers and school staff. So as we said before, this is for parents and caregivers, but it's also for other family members who work with a young person. So if you have grandparents or extended family that you think would be really useful for them to know about some of our resources, then please do feel free to share that. So today in the session, we're going to look at how you adapt from parenting a child to parenting a young adult, and the importance of building trust, respect, and open communication in your relationship with them. Okay, so we're going to take a brief look at child development so that we're kind of sighting ourselves in where our young person has been and where they're going to in their developmental status. So when a child is younger, between sort of 6 to 11 years old, we're expecting them to be able to complete an instruction, to be able to understand other people's perspectives, to be able to form ideas of their own, and to mimic an adult's behavior. So as a parent, we might be the ones issuing an instruction. We might be helping them to understand someone else's point of view. And we might not always realize that they are copying what we do, because sometimes as a parent, it can feel like we have no influence, so why are they not doing what we're asking? But often actually they're watching and they're learning through what we're doing. So it's important, we'll come back to this concept of modeling the behavior that we want to see. So as we move on to the adolescent phase, 11 to 17, our young people are going to be able to develop their own views and opinions on things, and some of those will conflict with our own. They'll be sometimes exploring a different viewpoint to us that maybe we're uncomfortable with. They will be wanting to seek increasing independence from us. They are learning to be a young person. That is what they should be doing, a young adult rather. And they will be increasingly thinking logically. Obviously, that happens towards the end more of that developmental period. So the logic comes as their brain and their ability to think logically comes online, and all those sort of neurological structures are laid down and in place. And this allows them to have a greater degree of empathy for others, to think through situations and the repercussions to a greater extent. But also with that comes a need for privacy. And we're going to be exploring some of the things that we can do to support some of those changes that are happening in that adolescent phase. So the rest of the session is going to be based on the idea of the role of a parent, having been a manager when the child was younger and moving to a consultant model as they become an adolescent. So we're going to watch a video here that explains it beautifully, and then we're going to pick it apart a little bit more and give you some skills around that.
When kids are born, the parents metaphorically are the manager of their life. They organize their life, they sign them up for classes, they take them to the playground, they set up play dates. And kids love us in this role. They love us as the manager. They look up to us. If you go into a kindergarten class and kids are clinging to their parents, they're showing them off to all their friends. It's just a wonderful thing. Then somewhere in late middle school, early high school, adolescence, they unceremoniously, without consulting with us, fire us as the manager of their life. And they basically say, that's it. I'll take over from here. When this happens, parents do one of two things. They either abandon their kids. I got fired. Okay, well, I'll go live my life. Good luck. I hope things work out. You know, first one up in the morning, let the cat out. If you're the last one, and make sure you lock the door and set the alarm. Or they end up fighting for control. I call it sort of they litigate for wrongful termination for the next 3 years, in which case nobody wins, because you get into that battle about you want to stay the manager. When the reality is, when they fire you, that's what they're supposed to do. That's how they're going to develop their independence. So the first thing what we really have to do when they fire us is grieve a little bit, get over it, And then our job is to get rehired as the consultant, which is different than a manager. It's not the face-to-face paradigm. It's much more the actually it's about a half step back, side-by-side relationship with them. And from the consultant role, you can begin to think more about influence than control. And now you're gonna have a healthy relationship with your teenagers as they go through adolescence.
Okay, so as we've seen, the idea of the consultant parent involves several different layers. And we're going to break those down today into building trust, respect, open communication, and an ability as a parent to emotionally regulate and model that for our child. And Steph's now going to talk a little bit more about trust and what that means as a consultant parent.
Thank you. So trust is a fundamental aspect of any relationship, whether that is two strangers speaking on the street. There is a level of trust there that they are in a safe interaction. There is a level of trust between two close friends of confidentiality, that they may share stuff with each other and that it will only go as far as each other. There might be a level of trust in a romantic monogamous relationship, that the boundaries of that relationship will remain monogamous. And also with a child and parent, mostly from the child, that they trust that their parent will keep them safe, loved and protected. And as you can see in those examples, there are lots of different dynamics and levels of trust. And what we're going to talk about here is how there are new levels of trust need to be built as your young person transitions from a child to an adolescent. So one of the first qualities that we would recommend of how to build those new levels of trust is to start to look at them as their own autonomous individual, that they have their own thoughts and opinions and concerns, and will have a desire to want to express those. So what we recommend is if there are especially decisions or choices that are happening within the home that directly affect your young person, start to bring them into those discussions. Hear what their thoughts and opinions are. Listen to what it is that they have to say, what concerns them. Is there a conflict of opinions? Is there actually some common ground that can be found? By having those discussions with them, it's really going to build those levels of trust that you are there to listen to them and that you respect them as an equal. We also recommend having a very non-judgmental, non-critical attitude towards them, especially around the idea of when they make mistakes. This period of transition of adolescence is about them learning how they become adults. And part of any learning process is that we make mistakes. And from making those mistakes, we actually learn a great deal more information. So it's kind of feels a bit inevitable that our adolescent teenagers will make mistakes at some times. And it's about being able to come along with them and just having no judgment, not being critical, but having compassion that they've made a mistake, that they've learned from it and that they can move forward with that. All those kind of qualities together is really going to build that new level of trust. But when considering young people and them making mistakes, and that potentially sometimes those mistakes might mean that that trust that's been built has been broken, then it's start to think about their responsibilities and consequences. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here just sort of covering ways to do healthy consequences. So what we would first recommend to do is have a consequence that matches the wrongdoing that has occurred. So an example to use there is maybe that your young person has a time that they need to be home by, say it's 9 p.m, or that you'd agreed with them that they would be home for dinner at 7 p.m. that night. And they have turned up an hour and a half past that sort of agreed upon time. So the consequence for that would be, we would suggest, is something that matches the wrongdoing, is that they then owe you an hour to an hour and a half back of their time. We also think it's quite a good idea that maybe that when they are owing you back that time, that they're doing something that earns back that trust. So they're not just at home, sort of on their phone as they normally would be, just wasting away that time, but rather they're doing something active that is earning back that trust. And that's kind of the idea of a difference between the positive punishment versus like a negative punishment. Once a consequence has been completed, what we'd recommend is having this conversation with them. Ask them, did you know what you were doing was wrong? And in an ideal world, they're going to say yes, that they knew that staying out an extra hour or so, that they would get in trouble, that was against what you'd already agreed and that it was the wrong thing to do. Then ask them, well, what was it that stopped you from doing the right thing? And it could be that, oh, well, I didn't notice the time, or I didn't think it would be a big deal, or the film we were watching was still going on. I didn't think it would really be a problem. Hear their point of view, hear what it was that happened. And then at the end of the conversation, what you want to do is affirm to them that you've heard them and that you believe they know what the right thing to do is. So when you ask them, did you know what you were doing was wrong? And they say, yes, I did. They know what it is, what the right thing and the wrong thing is to do. And then offer them the suggestion of, well, I hope next time that you'll make a better choice. And in that sort of ending, what you're doing is you're bringing back the trust. You've said to them, I trust that you know what the right and the wrong thing is to do. And you're putting the responsibility back in their hands. I hope that next time, though, you make a better choice. Moving on to looking at the respect between the parent and child, it's quite similar to trust in many ways. It is that two-way street. It's not just about, well, can you trust your child, or does your child show respect to you? But it's also about your sort of role in this. Are you showing your child respect? As Amy mentioned earlier, parents' job, especially the consultant parent, is a lot about modelling. And you modelling respect to your child is not only going to show them how to show respect to others, but it's also going to instill in them the respect that they deserve to receive. A lot of what happens between your relationship between parent and child will echo into future relationships that your child has. And one of the main ways that we look at about respecting a child is respecting their journey for self-discovery through adolescence. And it might sound a bit cliche about a journey of self-discovery, but it very much is a transitionary period. You know, we might all remember when we were teenagers, we kind of went through a bit of a goth grungy stage, and then we went through a really sporty stage a year later. At one point we wanted to be a lawyer, but then next year we wanted to be a vet. There's a lot of change that happens during this transition period because they're trying to figure out who they are as adults. It's kind of like trying on lots of different hats of like what works, what feels right, but also what doesn't feel right. And this is absolutely normal. This is exactly what they're meant to be doing. But it's also okay that as the family that's around them, that can feel quite unstable. There's lots of changes happening and can be difficult to sort of sit with. But what we recommend is just really respecting them for where they're at, that they're trying to understand who they are and who they're going to be, not judging them for their changes, but rather just coming alongside them and showing that you're there to support them. So you want to be a lawyer? That sounds amazing. That's great. They change their mind a year or so later and they want to become a vet or something totally different. That's okay. That sounds amazing. I'll help you with that. And if they change their mind again, that's also okay. When they start to reach adulthood, those changes will start to settle down because they would have learned a lot during this period. And another little tip that's quite good for sort of building respect, if you're finding at the moment between you and child, there just feels like a little bit of a gap in your relationship, is learning from them. It can be really intimidating and a really vulnerable experience when you're learning something new, especially when there are people around you who already know what to do. So if you think about being a teenager, they're learning of how to become adults, and then they're surrounded by people who are already adults and look like they're doing it really well. So it's about maybe trying to flip those roles, trying to learn from them and showing respect to them in that way, that they can be the expert in something. So whether it's learning TikTok dances or whether it is learning about a new TV show or a new book that they're doing, it's a really nice activity that you can do with your children to really sort of show that equal playing field and builds trust and respect. One of the main things that we see when there is conflict between a parent and child is the conflict over their right to privacy. Now, young people as their own autonomous individuals do have a set of rights stated out by the UNCRC. And one of their main ones is that they have a right to privacy. Now, by respecting a young person's right to privacy, it not only also builds trust, but it promotes a good model of how to respect the personal space of others, but also respect their own personal space. It encourages them to take ownership over their space, and comes with any kind of ownership also then comes with the responsibilities and consequences. And if we're talking in more of a mental health capacity, having our own space, having our own privacy can be a really beneficial tool to keeping a calm, well-balanced well-being.
Okay, thanks, Steph. So we're going to talk a bit about now open communication and how that can help to support the trust and respect that we've been talking about, Steph's been mentioning. Again, talking about things openly with adolescents can be challenging. We know it's not always easy, and adolescents don't always want to open up. So what Steph was mentioning about spending time together doing something that they enjoy and them being able to teach you something new is a really good way of starting to get the right feel in that relationship, that they are an equal partner and there's trust and respect there. And that will make it more likely that they will feel able to open up to you. We advise that actually checking in with them regularly, like getting a good routine up so that they are expecting to be able to talk to you about things, and you can sort of track their progress as it were. When we're having these sorts of open conversations, we recommend using words like what, how, where, you know, where did you go last night? Or like, how is your friend so-and-so? Or what happened in your so-and-so lesson? Da, 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 da. Because it's exploratory, it's showing interest. Whereas sometimes if we use the word why to start a sentence, it can sound automatically judgmental. Why did you go to so-and-so's when I needed you home? And that we often get told by young people makes them not want to talk to you. So it's that coming back to that feeling judged, it shuts down communication straight away. So we're trying to hold back on that. We recommend using active listening skills in a conversation, which we have a whole seminar on, which is also on our Newport Mind YouTube page. So look out for that. We look at the skills of praising them for opening up, empathizing with what they're going through, exploring what they're going through in more detail, and reflecting back our own understanding to check that we've got it right and to show them that we're listening. We also say that if you're able to have these very open conversations where there's a really nice balance and a really nice feeling of respect between you guys, these conversations give you more opportunity to talk about risk that your child might be facing, and have those discussions about the ramifications of some of the decisions around risk taking that they could run into. And often if they've explored something, a risky situation, before they've got to the risky situation, that can help them to make a better decision, particularly if they don't feel judged. And again, this is a really big thing. If there's a judgment call on the part of the parent, they won't feel comfortable to explore that in all its kind of messy detail. So one of the things that's really important in terms of coming back to this concept of modeling as a parent is emotion regulation. So we are always hoping and expecting that our young people will regulate their own emotions. And often when they don't, we kind of wonder why, or we get cross. Actually, sometimes we need to think about regulating our emotions better. And that doesn't mean not feeling stuff. It doesn't mean not getting annoyed, because that's going to happen and it's a valid human experience. But it's about understanding why we are annoyed. Is it because of something that's happened in our day, and actually something our young person has done is just flicked a switch and the whole apple cart's tipped over now? But actually taking that moment just to decompress, to stop, drop and breathe. So stop what you're doing rather than reacting. Drop whatever it is that's in your mind that you were getting upset about, and just take that couple of deep breaths, so that it gives you that pausing space to actually think, okay, no, I'm really annoyed at my day. I am worried about what's just happened, but I need to tell my young person this rather than shout at them. So moving on to the next point there, it's okay to share your feelings with your young person. So if we try to suppress and ignore those things, they will see that we feel that frustration or anger. But if we're not talking about it, that's then a very scary thing to witness, and they can often imagine worse things than what we might be going through. So to actually be able to go to your young person and say, look, yes, I am feeling stressed. I am feeling a bit frustrated in this situation. I have had a really long day at work and that's made things worse. And I'm feeling worried about things that you might be facing at school or whatever it is. And I'm still okay. All right. So I'm feeling this and I'm still okay. So that's a really nice way to model that you can talk when things get too much for you. And if your young person sees you doing that, then they're more likely to replicate that and do that themselves. And that's part of how you are able to influence them as a consultant. So the question then is the manager gone forever? Once you've moved to this model of being the consultant, is the manager gone forever? Well, we would say again, it's a balancing act. Parenting is an entirely grey area, I think. You know, there's not necessarily always a clear black and white way to do things. And it's a two-way street. So some days you're going to be looking at how your young person is influencing a situation, but you must also be looking at how you are influencing that situation and how your relationship together might be influencing the situation. We'd always say put safety first. So the one time we suggest that you might need to bring the manager back is if your young person is at risk of harm. And if they are making extremely poor decisions, that's putting them in harm's way. And it might be that the manager needs to step back for an isolated incident. It might be that the manager needs to step back for a period of time while your young person is able to sort out this situation, get themselves to a better headspace. But as soon as it's possible, we recommend trying to step back into that consultant model and give them back the trust, the respect, and the ability to sort of control what's going on in their lives as soon as possible. Within that process, so when you're going through a time when you're thinking about maybe bringing the manager back in and managing a very stressful situation with your young person, the issue of confidentiality raises its head. When children are younger, we tend to, as parents, automatically talk about what the sleeping pattern was last night, what the potty training is happening, what are you doing about this, how are you managing that? And we get very used to talking to our friends about what's going on with our children. But when our children move into the adolescent phase, they don't necessarily want us to be talking to our friends, because that then gets back potentially to their peer group, and then all their peer group know, and the confidentiality is blown, and therefore they don't want to talk to us. So if we want that relationship, that safe space for our young person, we need to be a confidential space for them, unless they've said, it's fine, talk to your friends, talk to so-and-so, I'm happy. But we need to make sure that we're providing that confidential space for them. However, that can be a massive burden for us as individuals and parents. And we would recommend, we have in our signposting slide in a couple of slides' time, we have a couple of suggestions for where you can go to get advice and somewhere to talk in a professional space. That means you do have support and you do have someone to talk about these things to, but you aren't breaking that confidentiality, which is so important to your young person. And lastly, it's a nuanced approach. Using and applying the consultant model does require tweaks and changes according to your young person and your family situation and yourself as an individual. And knowing when to use a manager or not, again, is going to require maybe just a bit of reflection and thought about how you approach that situation. Okay, over to Steph for the signposting.
Thank you very much, Amy. Yeah. So just some brief signposting of services that are available to your young person if they were struggling at all with their mental or emotional health. So Childline, Young Minds and The Mix have all got a really good online presence. So they have very child-friendly websites full of information and support strategies, but as well, most of them have things like phone lines, or you can have online chats or emails with counsellors where they can start to talk and work through stuff. For more local face-to-face organisations, obviously there's Newport Mine, but if you were to contact the school safeguarding lead at your child's school, they would probably be a really good contact for organisations in your local area, same as your GP. They can both put in referrals. But also as well, do not forget about emergency services. If you were ever concerned about the immediate safety of your young person, whether it's regarding physical or mental health, emergency services are there to support with that as well. More specifically though, for around parenting adolescents, as of the date of this upload of this video, these are some of the organisations and support that's available there. So you can see there, Young Minds, they actually have a parent advice line from Monday to Friday, 9:30 till 4 p.m. Talking Zone is the local Newport organisation that is the school-based counsellors. And since the beginning of the pandemic, they have been offering parent consultations for 30 minutes, where you can have a conversation with a counsellor about some of the concerns you might have of the mental health of your family, of your young person. And at Newport Mind, we have a lot of adult and family services. One of our more recent ones is called Stronger Together, where sessions will cover things such as depression, anxiety, cycle of change, mindfulness, peer support, self-care, and cooking, amongst many other things. If you are interested in any of the services at Newport Mind, we have a website that you can see there, www.newportmind.org. You're more than welcome to email us at that, or if more specifically for the Stronger Together programme, you can email rianadams@newportmind.org. Thank you very much for joining us again for one of our seminars. If you have any questions or if you want to get in touch at Newport Mind, you are welcome to email either Amy or myself. And if you have any feedback about this seminar in general, or if you want to have any suggestions about future seminars, you can see there is a very short feedback form, which we would greatly appreciate any feedback. Thank you very much.